We'll start this morning, as we do every morning, with OTBsports.com. Stephen Kenny's pedigree a concern after Kerr's Ireland tenure. So that's Jason McAteer drawing comparisons, unfavourable comparisons as they are for now. But it is an issue that has been raised, and we'll no doubt be debating it. And I'd say you're going to hear quite a bit about that on Saturday afternoon with Dan and Johnny alongside John Duggan as well. Vinnie Perth leaves Dundalk after Champions League exit. We'll come to that in a moment. Neil Lennon confirms Celtic interest in Republic of Ireland defender Shane Duffy. I was also part of our Pepsi Doritos Roadshow last night, and people can be lazy with analysis. Bradley happy with Rovers' creativity. You know, you compare and contrast the treatment of Stephen Bradley through difficult periods at Shamrock Rovers with Vinnie Perth, and I'm like, come on lads, come on Dundalk, come on, you could have seen this out. You could have continued with Vinnie Perth and let him learn from the experience of dealing with the pandemic, because he just won the league, right? Anyway, the sports page is no consensus on the back page. The front page as well, the tabloids. COVID-19th hole. Cleary and Hogan at rule break golf event. Darragh Cleary has fallen on his sword this morning, and he might save everybody else who was there, unless all of a sudden Phil Hogan is like, now the pressure's on him. And it might be, because Fianna Fáil are going to come wanting some Fine Gael blood. And even though he's the EU Commissioner, we know he's a Fine Gaeler. Will P. Plea. It's very important to me he signs a new deal. I don't really get this headline. I feel like I might be missing something. Willian has a simple message for his Arsenal teammate Pierre-Emerick Aubameyang. Please stay. Will P. So Pierre-Emerick, it's shortened. Is his nickname P? Is he Chicharito? Is he somehow connected to that? I don't know. Do you have any ideas, Shane? Season remains on course. The GAA story, we'll get to that in a minute. Party blooper is the front page headline on Darragh Cleary. I think that might be top of the morning from the Star. Pep's great escape. Yaya Toure reckons he'd have been sacked anywhere else, but yeah, he's a great manager. There was like a little bit of ambivalence about that. Katie to prove she is world's greatest. That's a picture of Delphine Persoon, Katie Taylor and Eddie Hearn. The back page of the London Times. Let's go out with a bang. Root goes for pace in final test of the summer. West Ham want to get rid of Jack Wilshere. They're willing to pay up his contract. It's 100 grand a week. Jack Wilshere on 100 grand a week. I mean, somebody somewhere did a bad deal there. And Messi, I feel, on outside of the club. So Ronald Koeman's first job was to keep Leo Messi happy, and it doesn't look like it. Bogey men, and it's largely men, Agriculture Minister and EU Commissioner among 80 at hotel event, but they were in separate rooms. They were on a break. Back page of the Mirror. Barca would have sacked you by now. Pep given easy ride by City, and everything on the table for the GAA. That's the story. We'll get to that in a moment. The Racing Post. Inter have odour of Cologne champions. See what they did there? Cologne odour. Unleash the speed machine. Explosive sprinter Batash out to blow away Nunthorpe rivals. That's again on ITV. The Independent, that same picture of Katie Taylor, Delphine Persoon and Eddie Hearn. Big fight. We're talking about that with Ronan Mullen in just a little while. Rugby to mark COVID deaths and back anti-racism. The All-Ireland show must go on, insist Croker Chiefs. Yesterday was a much more calm and measured approach from the GAA. Back on message. GAA ready to borrow to fund championships amid revenue losses for counties. I couldn't make out if the GAA essentially were going to borrow, if they were going to dip into their own reserves of cash, or if they were going to allow the county boards to borrow from Croke Park. So I guess that'll become clear in the coming days. Croker in aid relief is the headline of Colin Key's piece in the Herald, and Perth pays price for poor form of Dundalk. Well, I haven't seen too many people picking Paris Saint-Germain, but Richard Dunn is going for them there. And the Daily Mail back page, holding firm, GAA stands by All-Ireland plan with funds vow. Perth pays the price for Lily's European exit, and all systems go as Reds unleash Box Stars. So do we expect both of them to play? Do we? Allende and RG Snyman are both poised to move straight into the starting lineup. So those teams, can't wait to see those teams being named. And plenty of rugby to look forward to. There you go, back page of The Guardian is cricket as well, and Liverpool host Leeds at the start of hectic campaign, so it's obviously an early edition there. The Telegraph have an interesting story apart from the cricket. Football fans will be blocked from watching 160 Premier League games on TV next season, despite being currently banned from attending matches during the coronavirus crisis. And last one for now is the Irish Times this morning. Cooney hoping the magic touch returns after lockdown. Great interview with John Cooney from Joe Malloy the other night on, was it Monday Night Rugby or Wednesday Night Rugby? So check that out on the OTB Rugby stream on the OTB Podcast Network. You should subscribe to that there. And Gibney story, a cautionary tale. We still need to heed Johnny Waterson, who did loads of work on the George Gibney story, talking about it today as well. And that is GAA moves to ensure inter-county season goes ahead. Where are we starting, Shane?
Yeah, I guess we'll start with that GAA story, given that it's dominating so many of the back pages, but a little bit more of a positive outlook, I think, for GAA fans who are hopeful of an inter-county season happening. So this was the meeting you mentioned between President John Horan, Director General Tom Ryan, and county chairpersons, which took place yesterday. So this was a conference call that took place. And afterwards, the GAA released a statement saying that their plans to stage the Inter-County Championship remain under consideration. So it's not the most positive language, but it's more positive than we've had in recent days, given that the lack of crowds will be an issue over the next 3 weeks for the GAA. They've said there's increased optimism and appetite for inter-county games. So the argument certainly would be for games to be held behind closed doors rather than not at all. And as we said earlier, a second lockdown perhaps makes that all the more important that people have an outlet. And I know Tim Murphy, the Kerry chairman, was saying as much on this show this week. Then on the matter of funds, so they've essentially said, as is on the back pages this morning, cash-strapped county boards can be bailed out on a short-term basis. So the government has promised this €40 million to the three main sporting bodies in the country, so the GAA, along with the FAI and the IRFU. And the use of that money is, quote, for specific needs with regard to solvency and continued existence. So not necessarily to stage a championship, but certainly to keep the association afloat through these difficult times. The funding of football and hurling championships without crowds is likely to be dependent on this state money that comes. Tom Ryan, at that meeting that we mentioned yesterday, Ger, said that centrally sourced borrowings, as you said, will be available to county committees at the earliest opportunity before the state funding itself comes on stream. So it remains to be seen where that money will come from, but at least it will be offered to county boards. Then Croke Park themselves will oversee team budgets for each county, so ahead of the resumption of training on September 14th.
That's interesting. That's interesting.
Yeah, it's an interesting one. And we had the Carlo story a couple of weeks ago where they were expecting losses. Was it between 400 and 500,000 euro, I think, due to the loss of gate revenue. So it's a fairly big issue, and one which a lot of county boards will be looking on very, very cautiously indeed, but with a little bit more optimism for an inter-county season. One thing that kind of came out of that meeting yesterday that really dipped under the radar was that they suspect 3 counties of still training in advance of the September 14th date. So I saw this hidden on like paragraph 10 or something, and I was like, clearly we don't know who these
story
3 counties
here
are.
3 counties still training away, and the trouble is, if 3 counties are training away, and if you hear about that, what are you going to do? You going to go training?
Well, the remaining counties are going to say, well, those 3 counties have a head start on the rest of us, so it's
unfair
an unfair
advantage.
Yeah. So it's an interesting one, but September 14th is not too far away, but it's still a long way off when you consider that those counties they're not just dipping into training a couple of days before September 14th. They are literally throwing a big middle finger at the advice for September 14th and just going, you know what, screw that, we're going to go training straight away. So that's a bit of a worry. And I think a lot of people would love to know who those 3 counties are. And that's the 3 counties that we know of course. And the other key meeting that took place this week in relation to the GAA was the fixtures calendar task force, that they reconvened on Wednesday night to discuss their ongoing matters, and this edition of a split season model that looks likely to be put forward to as a motion for Congress in 2021. And we saw recently it had GPA and CPA support, and possibly some support in the GAA as well. So more positive outlook from the GAA this week. Yeah,
so the Sean Moran's piece has news of a briefing that was sent to players by the GPA, and in a separate meeting, this is in quotes, in a separate meeting last night with GAA's COVID-19 Advisory Committee, it was clear there's a positive will within the GAA to complete both the club and inter-county season successfully. The risk remains due to the dynamic nature of the situation we face that this could change based on public health advice. Our job is to ensure that the health and safety of players are not compromised to a level of undue risk. So GPA saying, as far as we understand, all systems go for an inter-county championship, and this is a kind of separate, they're obviously at the COVID-19 GAA Advisory Committee. And then they also say that their proposal on the split season had been presented to the Fixtures Calendar Review Task Force on Wednesday night, and there was broad support for the proposal and for the split season model. So I think like the last 3 days has been groundswell of support for split season as presented by the GPA to the Fixtures Review. The GAA taking over team expenses centrally. That's really interesting. That's a massive shift. And if that's what comes out of all this, then they'll be the ones who are in charge of the runaway train, the unstoppable juggernaut. The stuff that came out, that was like the main focus. Remember there was a row earlier this year between the GAA and the GPA. The GPA issued this statement saying we're really pissed off about the fact that you're focusing on the expense of running the teams as opposed to all the other stuff that actually leads to the expense of running the teams. And they got criticised for that because, like, let's face it, they get criticised almost any time they do anything, except with this one occasion where they seem to have stemmed the tide. But now, all of a sudden, it's going to be the GAA themselves who are in charge of that. And if that's the model into the future, that's not a bad thing. Like, they have the expertise, they have the finance, they have the financial power to be able to go into counties and say, right, any money that gets spent on the inter-county setup runs through this office, and that office is controlled by Croke Park. So you could have one person doing 5 or 6 counties. Doesn't that make it
fascinating?
Doesn't it? Suddenly the expenses for managers travelling is like actually legitimately the expenses, or else they're getting paid completely under the counter in cash by a third party. And like, I mean, that's obviously happening. We know that is happening in various counties, and then it becomes a matter for revenue. Like, but you begin to rein things in, and they're clearly not wasting the opportunity of the crisis.
Yeah, the breakdown per county is going to be very, very interesting, and how they actually come to those figures. I'd like to see their maths on that as well. And Paul Flynn was talking about competitive balance on this show not that long ago, and could it be the former Dublin footballer who proposes? He's proposing competitive balance within the GAA and learning from the Aussie rules in that regard. But if Dublin don't get the lion's share of money that they probably currently get in terms of sponsorship, we could see a tighter GAA championship, which we all want to see. And I know you've been always pushing for Dublin to be split in 2, so maybe we don't need to.
Don't misquote me. 4. Split it in 4. Let's go. Come on. North, south, east and west. Well. Yeah. Why not? Like, come on. I mean, in terms of population, it makes the most sense. I don't think it's going to happen, to be honest. So part of that is facetious trolling. But actually, I mean, look at the population. Why? When you think about it, why are we locking down counties on the basis of county borders? We inherited the county system from 800 years ago, and it might not serve us. It might not be the best way to think about how we live and breathe in this country, is it?
Yeah, it like the per capita thing then comes in, and I've always spoken about how Monaghan is the most impressive team per capita, and maybe that argument will be thrown out the window if someone like West Dublin or East Dublin comes in and takes over. So the Westies, yeah. So who knows? It's an interesting time for the GAA. The next couple of months will tell all.
The branding looks after itself. OK, what time? 8:47 here this morning on OTB AM, live in association with Gillette. Good morning. Start with Gillette, giving you the confidence to tackle the day ahead. Pack show still to come. Rugby up next with Alan Quillen on Skype. But first, we're in the midst of the NBA playoffs, and there's only one team we're following here on OTB AM.